In the dusty outskirts of Caloocan, the morning sun barely cut through the thick haze of smoke and dust that clung to the neighborhood. Narrow dirt paths crisscrossed between rows of tin-roofed shacks, most barely holding together, swaying slightly with the afternoon winds. Among these modest homes stood a tiny dwelling where DeVoe, a thin young man with calloused hands and eyes that had seen far too much struggle for his years, lived with his family. Life had never been kind to them. Their modest yard was dominated by an old cement well, weathered and chipped from decades of use, its edges dark with moss and grime. It was their lifeline, their only source of water, yet even it seemed tired of giving. Near the well wandered Seaman, the family's only cow, a lean, stubborn creature with fur matted from mud and neglect, who had somehow survived the harshness of their world. On that particular morning, DeVoe approached the well with a sense of weariness mixed with determination. The bucket, once shiny and reliable, had rusted and cracked over time. He struggled to fit it onto the frayed rope, his fingers stiff from the chill and the labor of years. Seaman, sensing movement and the faint scent of water, nudged DeVoe's leg with her wet nose. Startled, he stumbled backward, losing balance, and the bucket tipped, spilling water across his worn sandals and soaking the lower hem of his patched pants. Seaman's hooves slipped on the wet cement, sending splashes of muddy water flying over DeVoe's tired face. For a moment, anger and frustration surged within him, a bitter cocktail of exhaustion, hunger, and the endless cycle of poverty. He clenched his fists, ready to shout, to curse the cow, the well, the world that had never been gentle with him. But then, a quiet memory surfaced, almost as if whispered by the wind itself. His mother from Tacloban, whose own life had been a series of relentless trials, had once told him, DeVoe, sometimes the heaviest weight you carry isn't the water or the work, it's what's inside your head. Empty it, and the world fits better. The words struck deep. He felt a pause in the chaos around him, as if the mud, the spilled water, and even Seaman's clumsy nudges were all part of a lesson waiting to be understood. DeVoe bent down, scooping some of the spilled water into the bucket, watching the sunlight catch the droplets as they splashed back into the well. Instead of anger, he felt a strange clarity. This moment, messy and inconvenient, was also a chance to reset, to let go of the frustration that had clung to him for far too long. He straightened, brushing the mud from his hands, and allowed himself a small, almost imperceptible smile. The well, the cow, the hardship, none of it changed immediately, but his reaction did. For the first time in a long while, DeVoe realized that his mind didn't have to mirror the chaos around him. In that messy morning in Caloocan, standing beside the old cement well with Seaman mooing softly, he made a quiet decision. He would empty his mind of negativity, of resentment, of despair. And in that emptiness, he would find the strength to begin anew. After that morning at the well, DeVoe felt something stirring within him, a strange mix of determination and curiosity. The mud, the spilled water, and even Seaman's clumsy antics had become symbols, reminders that his life didn't have to be defined by frustration or misfortune. With his mind still buzzing from the lesson he had remembered from his mother in Tacloban, he resolved to take small steps toward change. The first step was simple yet profound. He would empty his mind of the endless cycle of complaints, doubts, and self-pity that had held him prisoner for years. He began each day by standing beside the well, watching the sunlight glint off the water, breathing deeply, and letting go of the worries that had previously filled every thought. As he embraced this mental reset, DeVoe noticed subtle shifts in how he approached life. The chores around the small yard, once dreaded and rushed, became moments of focus and discipline. He milked Seaman with patience, cleaned the yard with care, and repaired the edges of the cracked cement well with whatever scraps he could find. Every task, no matter how small, became a lesson in patience and resilience. But DeVoe's ambitions stretched beyond mere survival. He wanted to learn, to grow, and to discover skills that could help him break free from the constraints of poverty. He ventured into the bustling streets of Cebu City, observing local craftsmen and workers. He asked questions, listened intently, and took notes in his mind and on scraps of paper. Though he had no formal schooling, he realized that knowledge could be gathered from observation, from persistence, and from a willingness to act on what he learned. Even when setbacks occurred, DeVoe refused to let negativity take root again. One afternoon, while carrying heavy buckets of water from the well, Seaman knocked one over, spilling its contents onto the dirt floor. In the past, he would have shouted, blamed the cow, and let anger fester. But now, he simply laughed, shook his head, and adjusted the bucket before continuing. Each spill, each mistake, each small frustration became a practice in letting go. By emptying his mind of anger, he created space for creativity, resilience, and hope. Slowly, the people around him, from neighbors in Iloilo to street vendors in Baguio, began noticing the quiet determination in the young man who once seemed defeated by life. DeVoe's presence was calm yet purposeful, a living example of what it meant to transform one's mindset before expecting the world to change. Through these early lessons, DeVoe discovered the truth behind his mother's words. It was not the circumstances of life that defined him, but how he chose to respond. By emptying his mind of negativity, he made room for courage, discipline, and innovation. And in that clarity, he could see a path forward, not just to survive, but to thrive, even amid poverty, mud, and a stubborn cow named Seaman. The old cement well, once a symbol of struggle, had become a silent mentor, teaching him that every drop of effort, every act of patience, and every mindful breath could reshape the life he had once thought predetermined. Months passed, and DeVoe's persistence began to bear fruit. What had started as a quiet determination beside a cracked Caloocan well with Seaman the cow became a pattern of small successes, each building upon the last. The young man who had once stumbled through life weighed down by frustration and poverty was now steady, purposeful, and focused. He repaired tools for neighbors in his village, shared lessons about careful planning and patience, and even helped maintain the local wells, offering his hands and his growing knowledge freely. Word began to spread from Baguio to Iloilo about the calm, capable young man who seemed to carry a spark of hope wherever he went. People admired not only what he did, but how he carried himself, the quiet assurance that comes from having mastered one's mind before mastering one's circumstances. DeVoe's life had changed, but he never forgot the lessons learned from the old cement well and the mud-splashed mornings with Seaman. Those moments had taught him patience, resilience, and the power of an uncluttered mind. He began to expand his small repair work into a modest community service, helping families fix broken tools, mend fences, and improve their homes. Each success reinforced the principle he had embraced from the beginning. External conditions might remain harsh, but an empty, focused mind could transform struggle into opportunity. Children in the neighborhood started following him around, watching as he worked, learning from his methods, and absorbing his quiet wisdom. DeVoe realized that his own growth was only meaningful if shared, and so he became a teacher without a classroom, guiding others with practical skills and life lessons alike. Perhaps the most profound change was within DeVoe himself. The anger, self-doubt, and frustration that had once clouded his mornings were gone. He approached challenges calmly, whether it was a stubborn bucket, a leaking roof, or Seaman's inevitable clumsiness. Even when setbacks occurred, he saw them not as failures but as opportunities to refine his approach and strengthen his mind. Villagers from Cebu City, Tacloban, and beyond came to seek his advice, amazed that someone from humble beginnings could carry such composure and effectiveness. In this way, the old cement well, once a symbol of hardship, stood as a metaphor for life itself, cracked, imperfect, yet filled with the potential to sustain, nourish, and teach. DeVoe's journey proved a simple truth, echoing his mother's words: when you empty your mind of fear, anger, and negativity, you create space for creativity, courage, and action. By the time the sun rose over Caloocan once more, DeVoe had become more than a survivor, he was a quiet inspiration. His life showed that poverty and struggle do not define one's destiny, the mind does. And as he tended to Seaman, repaired tools, and guided neighbors, DeVoe understood that real power comes not from wealth or status, but from mastering oneself. The muddy mornings, the spilled water, and the stubborn cow were no longer obstacles, they were stepping stones, reminders that the path to transformation begins not in changing the world, but in emptying the mind to see the possibilities within it. In the end, the boy from the cracked cement well became a living testament that with focus, patience, and a clear mind, anyone, no matter where they start, can rise, inspire, and change the lives of those around them.